Hello, everybody, and welcome to the It Works For Me podcast. I'm your host, Justin Kelly. This is podcast number 3. This podcast came from an idea that I had to write a book on some things that I do personally that keep me in a happy, positive mindset. And I was thinking about it, and I decided that I've done a podcast before, so why don't we do that instead of writing a book? Because I don't consider myself to be a fantastic, great writer. And so I started taking a list and trying to think of things that I would like to talk about. And I also started kind of looking around for guests, looking for people that I think would fit some of these topics and be able to contribute their things that work for them. And one of the guests that I have today is somebody that's very close to me. This podcast also, just to kind of go back a little bit, was designed more for men because I feel like there's a lot of lonely, anxious, unhappy men out there that are around the same age as myself, even older and younger. And I really thought that this podcast would kind of be more directed towards them, but also at the same time, I think that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in this podcast in upcoming episodes and past episodes can resonate with people, whether or not you're a man, woman, different races, those kinds of things. I think that it will be able to resonate and be something that's helpful to anybody. And the guest that I have on today is actually somebody who's done a podcast with me before. She's my mother, and she does not fit the male demographic, but my mother, Robin, is somebody that I have learned a ton about when it comes to being passionate about hobbies. And today's episode is completely focused on having a hobby, what it means to you, what it means to be passionate about a hobby, and why that, I believe, is something that's important for everybody to have to contribute to their mental health and their personal well-being. It could also help with their productivity and things like that. So welcome to the podcast. Again, thank you for joining me. I want to say mom, but thank you for joining me, Robin. Tell me a little bit about your background. I know that you are working in a medical device field. So tell me about your background, and then also maybe name maybe one of your, I guess I know your main hobby, but you might have others that I'm not aware of. So tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Robin, and I am a nurse by background and a program development consultant with Medtronic, working in the medical device field, as you said, in transcatheter aortic valve replacements. Love that role. I came from a hospital role where I worked with a program, and this was just a great next step for me to follow the passion that I have with medicine. And I would say hobbies have been an important part of my entire life. I have used the term with people today that I'm kind of a hobbyist. And
I
I
like
take
that.
up a lot of different things. I grew up with a dad who, if you told him you were bored, he would tell you that bored people are boring and to go find something to do. I have had, I would say, an obsession really with horses since I was a little kid, and really pursued having one, being around them. Before I had them, I would walk down the street to the neighbor's house and sit in their front yard and stare at their horse just grazing in the pasture and dream about someday being able to have one or ride one. And my dad had some friends that he worked with that had them, and they let me come over and get a taste of, I think he was trying to get the taste away from me, but so he
Kind of
sent
get
me
you
over,
away from the horses.
yeah, he sent me over there to clean stalls and figure out what the work part was all about. And it was over Christmas break, and I was probably 9 or 10 years old and had my fancy new cowboy boots, which are the worst thing to wear out in the barn in really cold temperatures, but they literally could not get me out of the barn. The wife ended up dragging me in and taking my boots off and warming my feet up, and then giving my dad a really hard time about, you need to get this kid a horse because it's obvious that she's not going to stop. So it was a few years before I had one of my own. But since then, it's really just been a part of my life. And a lot of people would argue that and I would even argue it's probably a lifestyle more than a hobby. But I definitely think that it was the beginning for me. And I do feel like hobbies can really bring a lot of enrichment to our lives. And I think that there was definitely a lot of overflow of things that I learned from that hobby that have helped me throughout my life and career.
Yeah, and so to go kind of to the beginning of it, what do you think sparked your interest in the beginning? Because I know you mentioned just always being really obsessed with them and wanting to go and see the neighbors. Was the neighbors the first time that you saw them? Did you see them in a storybook or a story told to you by your parents? Or, what do you think
Well,
was the first part?
we actually had a pony and a horse that belonged to my older sister. I'm not sure if you had ever known that, but my sister Laura had an Appaloosa and a little Welsh pony named Easter when I was little. And we didn't have a fence. We just had a barn, and they would go out in the yard on a long rope, and we would get, frequently the neighbors were irritated with us because they would go on little jaunts into the neighbor's property. And as all of us were involved with different things at school, and I was too little really to contribute much, there's a lot of care, as you well know, that goes into taking care of the horses. And so we had to get rid of those too. And that's probably where it all started. It was upsetting for them to be going, but it was kind of just something that was happening at the time, right? But I just never really lost that passion for it.
That's awesome. And I like how you brought up that it is more of a lifestyle, because my original intent of this podcast and idea and this episode specifically was, talking about, for myself, going to the gym and exercising. But I think that also is, now that I think about it, probably more of a lifestyle than it is a hobby, because it's something that I do every day, or as much as I can. And it feels weird when I'm not doing it. So if I take a few days off, I don't feel right. I don't feel normal. It's like, it's almost, I don't want to say addiction, but there are people that have told me that, you seem like you're addicted to going to the gym. So I think that's interesting that you brought that up, because now I'm starting to, and then the other point that you brought up of being a hobbyist, I've said that to tons of people. Our lives are not nearly long enough to do all of the things that I would like to do. I've wanted to learn to write. I wanted to learn to play music. I wanted to, yesterday, Elliot was downstairs wanting to hear her dance song. So then we started looking at YouTube videos on dancing, and I tried to learn how to do what is that where they're the Running Man. I tried to learn how to do the Running Man. And I said that this is impossible. I have zero rhythm, and I don't know how this is even something that people can do. But that's just interesting that you brought that up, because I feel like I have a bunch of hobbies, and there are people that I know that have zero, and I don't know if it's better. I know for a fact it's better to have a hobby and be passionate about something, but I don't know if it's better to have so many that you don't feel like you're ever really that good at just one of them. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay, so I have three different thoughts, and if I lose my place, please bring me back.
Yeah.
Okay. But number one, don't sell yourself short. I'm learning the Running Man. My daughter Allie taught me how to hula hoop, and I was certain that would never happen. And I learned to hula hoop when I was in my 40s. So don't give up on the Running Man. And yeah, I knew I would lose my place. Oh, the writing. You need an editor. You have a lot of thoughts in your head. There's nothing wrong with your writing. Your writing is fantastic. You just need to keep going and maybe need somebody to put a few periods and commas in there, and still be all set. You've got
That's what
some great
AI is
ideas.
for now.
True. And then on the lifestyle thing and the addiction to these things, I go back to really thinking about what it brings to our lives to have these things that we look forward to doing. And I meet so many people who, when I talk about the things that I do outside of work, they say, "Oh my gosh, I can't, I don't know how you find the time to do that. I don't have time to do those things." And I would argue that we spend a lot of time, and this is not a dig to other people. This is just how I look at it for myself, because I've even given that excuse to myself about working out or doing some of the things that would be good for me. I will tell myself I don't have time, but I always find that when I decide that I'm going to do it and set the time aside, that I get it done. And I am much more fulfilled. I look at things like watching TV, which is sometimes what I would be doing in some spare time to relax. And sometimes we all get sucked into binge watching a show or something like that. And I kind of look at that as white noise. My brain literally turns off and I'm just absorbing content, even if it's enjoyable. I mean, we enjoy TV and movies, we all enjoy talking about it and experiencing that. But when I enjoy time with the horses, or I do exercise, or I love knitting I know those are weird things. That's a big range.
No, that's good.
The boring to the exciting, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yep.
But when I do those things, my mind is working while I'm doing them. I'm thinking about something that's going on at work, or I'm working through something that's been on my mind for a long time, rather than just disengaging and settling into the white noise.
Yeah, I completely resonate with that. And one of the points that I wanted to make just from hearing your response was it seems to be a prevailing theme throughout the first 3 episodes and again, not trying to put a dig at anybody, but time, and people making the excuse about time. With the first podcast and talking about you look good, you play good, you feel good, that kind of thing with Colin Taylor. And then also the podcast with Jason and Patrick and John, talking about having friends in your life, a solid friend group that makes fun of each other and gives each other crap here and there, but in a positive way. It's not to be mean or bully each other, but it's to kind of, we wouldn't be making fun of each other and saying these jokes if we didn't have a positive intent behind them. And one of the things that we talked about with Colin was, I don't have the time to get up and go to the gym because he just had a young child, or he just had a baby, and he's having to be a dad, run a gym, exercise himself, do his content. He has a podcast, do all of those things. And, he could make the excuse that he doesn't have time. Having a new child takes a lot of time out of your day. I know for a fact because we have 2 of them. And then with John and Jason and Patrick, making time to spend the in-person time with your friends and having those connections is important, and you have to make that time. And it's just funny that you brought up your hobbies and having time to do them, people making the excuse saying, outside of work, I don't have the time to do those things. Again, back to what you said, you have to make that time. You have to make the time and commit to that time. And, specifically to be a better friend, today, John invited me to go to a euchre tournament at his Mason Lodge. And I wanted to say, I don't have the time to do that, but to be a better friend and commit to the things. And again, this podcast is a hobby that I hope turns into more, but I committed during that podcast, I'm going to be a better friend, and I'm going to make the time to see my friends, even if it's not convenient or doesn't feel like the thing that I specifically want to do that moment. It's important to live up to those commitments and make that time and follow through. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Another thing that I was curious about is with my hobby in the gym and even golf, those sometimes don't bring me happiness. I'm not happy every time I go to the gym. I'm not happy every time I play golf, because of either not being successful or shanking one into the woods, or, not hitting the weight that I wanted to hit on a certain lift or something like that. Is there times that you're doing your hobby and you do kind of question yourself and ask, why am I doing this? What is it that is the reason for this? And is this bringing me the happiness that I thought it would be?
Fun. And I would ask you, when you were trying to learn how to do the Running Man, how much did you laugh?
So much. And also so frustrated because I'm trying to figure out why my brain doesn't work with the rhythm, because I could get the move
Right.
down, but I could not figure out how to do the rhythm to keep it going. I was like, and Elliot's trying to coach me, and I'm like, hey, all right, I got this. Okay. You're 4. Okay. I could figure this out. And, it was just,
No,
that was
I
really
think
funny.
that, yeah, I think that keeping a sense of humor and also not getting caught up in the way the world works and the framework that we live in all the time, I have to constantly remind myself that I don't have to be great at something to enjoy it and for it to bring me joy. And I have to step back sometimes, because often when I'm not enjoying myself, I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, that, there are times that I get on to ride one of the horses and I think I have been doing this for a really long time. And you would think I would be better at it, when I'm just not getting the result that I'm looking for. And I have to step back, because that's something about horses. You know, whew, you can go in with a plan, and it's kind of like golf, really. The experience that I've had, with the limited times that I have golfed, you really have to get the day out of your head. If you go in to work with an animal with a tight agenda and, I'm going to achieve this in this amount of time, those days don't go well. And they really pick up on your emotions. And, you can go in with a plan, but you also have to go in with an open mind. And you may have thought you were going to ride for a half an hour or an hour. You achieve something really good in 5 or 10 minutes, and you need to quit. Because seriously, you need to quit and step away, let them kind of work through what they just learned, and vice versa. If it's a bad day, you don't. And believe me, I have worked 2 hours in,
Mm-hmm.
and really that was not a good thing. But yeah, and the other thing I would say is I love the thought you mentioned, curiosity. I love surrounding myself with people that are curious and that have passions and hobbies. And a lot of times I really draw energy and draw from their examples. I draw from your example. I saw something the other day that said, you get up and go to work at a certain time every day to support a company, but you can't get up at 5 a.m. to support something that you're passionate about or you love for yourself. And so I look at the things that you're pursuing and that you do, and that gives me drive. I have a lot of friends who have different hobbies, and when we get together and talk about the things that we're doing, and I hear about them, getting up at 5 a.m. before they go to work so they can do X, Y, and Z. And that helps to drive me to set that time aside.
Yeah, that is a great segue to talking about what we talked about before and in other episodes so far, and surrounding yourself with people that do the things that you would like to do, or not even doing the same thing, but just like you said, giving you that energy and that drive to do those things. Because if you surround yourself with people that aren't doing those things, then it's just kind of sitting around talking about work the whole time, which nobody, I mean, you've spent all that
Or
time
the
at work.
last
You don't
show
want,
you watched.
yeah, or the last show you watch. But that's an interesting thing. And, somebody specifically is my friend Patrick, who does jujitsu. What a ridiculous thing to think about when I am complaining about going to the gym. I'm going to the gym and I'm going to go exercise, and it might be hard and difficult, but it's not going to a place where there's a bunch of people trained to choke you out
You're
every
not going to get
5
your ass
minutes.
kicked.
Yeah. I'm not getting my butt kicked every single day, by people that are either smaller, bigger, same size. Like, it's just crazy to kind of think about that. And he does that as a hobby, but again, it's a passion. He travels, he plans his vacations around tournaments. So him, his wife, and his little one will go on vacation somewhere. And during that time on the vacation, there will be a couple of days that he does his jujitsu tournament. So it's like kind
That
of a
is
win.
a fun fact that I never would have guessed
It's kind of a
about
win.
Patrick.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everybody, because he's able to they're able to travel, see new places, and do interesting things. But at the same time, he's able to still pursue his passion. So I think that's an important thing, is being able to, again, what we've talked about is making time to do it. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about was, how has the hobbies or the things that you're into influenced like your professional life? So for me specifically, doing this podcast this podcast, and then the other one that I did previously, makes me very comfortable on Zoom, makes me very comfortable talking to large groups of people, or even talking to people one-on-one, either via Zoom or in person, because I've just done it so many times that it just feels very comfortable to ask people questions, to listen to their answers, to kind of guide the conversation in a way that I would like to, hopefully it would go in the way I want it to go. Specifically, I had a job shadow experience where I was just kind of following some people around. And, one of the things that I kind of noticed about myself during that time was, I felt like I was asking insightful questions. I felt like I was asking people I was asking questions about the person themselves. And, one of the unique things that I've read about and learned about is that people do like to talk about themselves, even if that's not something that they consciously think about. When you're asking somebody about what they're into and what they do, it gives them kind of a chemical rush in their brain of, dopamine. And it's one of those things that people feel happy about. So I feel like doing this podcast, exercising, is another thing that I think helps in a professional aspect, because typically I do it in the morning, but it's not always going to be in the morning. But when you wake up and do something difficult first thing in the morning, the rest of your day seems to be pretty easy. And so that's one of the reasons I like to do my exercise and my workout in the morning. So that, I think that's another way that it's helped me professionally, because, if I've done something difficult in the morning, having a tough conversation with somebody later in the day isn't as bad, because I've already done something difficult. So for you, what do you think with any of those three things that you mentioned, or anything else that you've gotten into? How do you think that's impacted your professional life?
Well, I believe that there are many things. I think that the hobby of horses definitely impacted me in being comfortable with doing things that are really difficult, right? Like really tackling things that are difficult and having the confidence to follow through with it. Learning patience, because you cannot force it. You can't force anything. And also, I think subtle communication. I know I'm probably getting a little deep, but
No, that's good.
there's horses pick up on emotions at a very they have a pretty large perimeter that they pick up on your energy. And a lot of the things that I have learned from doing work with them has really impacted me in the way that I communicate with people and handle things with people, and kind of looking for those, the subtle communication and nonverbal communication, I think, and learning to be persistent and appreciate the small wins.
Do you think people have, not do you think people have, do people, so you're saying with the picking up on subtle cues, Is that something, again, that what are some like examples, I think, that you could maybe mention that you may have noticed or learned from doing your hobby, and then also maybe applied it in a personal interpersonal setting,
Uh-huh.
if you have one? You don't. I know that's
No,
probably a tough
no,
question.
no, it's a really good question. I definitely think in working with when you're working in a situation where you're trying to teach someone a new skill, or you're trying to um, maybe show them a product that they're not comfortable with. I think being comfortable with not pushing and being patient and paying attention to subtle clues and asking questions rather than, just going in really boldly, which is that's kind of my thing. I'm bold, and sometimes I have a lot to say. And so having some of those lessons that sometimes, it's better to maybe think things through a little bit more, be comfortable with silence and waiting. I think all of those things have really impacted the way I deal with people, whether it's in the work that I'm doing right now, or, the work I've done as a nurse leading up to the role that I'm in now. I think all of those things have impacted me.
Mhm. So those are the positives. Now let's kind of switch gears into, so what are some negatives? And I'll start actually, and then we'll discuss this together. But maintaining those hobbies, maintaining the time for them. I know time has been a big topic of discussion throughout this podcast, but when it comes to my hobby of, let's just stick with just the gym for now. Um, it's difficult sometimes for me to plan my day around it, and or vacations and things like that. So it kind of becomes a little bit of a challenge for family and friends and things of that nature. So for me, I try to plan it with the least amount of effect it's going to have on everybody else. So that's why I try to do it in the morning. I try to do it at lunchtime. If I can't get in the morning, I try to do it during the middle of the day at lunch, or after my girls are in bed, so that I don't negatively affect the other people in my life. Vacation. Whenever we're planning a vacation, I try to find places that I know I can go exercise. I try to do it as before everybody gets up. I try to make sure that I'm not getting in the middle of the day. I'm not, impeding people's plans by doing it. But there are times that it has caused, for Jen and I, stress, because maybe I don't get to go until 4 o'clock. It goes a little longer. I'm not getting home till 5:30 or 6. That time is really tough because Jen's trying to get dinner ready. And if I'm not at home during that time, that's a struggle because the girls are looking for her attention. And typically the normal process is I'm home, I'm keeping their attention and I'm playing with them, doing something while she's getting dinner ready. And so it kind of creates kind of a little bit of a challenge. And for me, the only way I've kind of figured out how to reduce that is by doing it outside of those times. It can affect everybody. What kind of challenges have you kind of faced? And I know horses is a big thing. I know that just because you're my mom, I grew up with you. It's an expensive thing. It's a lot of work taking care of them. What are kind of some of the challenges that you face, and how do you think you've overcome them as best you can?
Well, I would say pretty much all of the things that you have listed. I'm sure at times you have fought feelings of feeling a little selfish for the things that you do. I think that it's difficult sometimes with the personality and the drive to do all of these things and be curious and pursue all of these things can really put stress on you as an individual, the people around you. And I have had different times in my life, like you, when my kids were younger and in school, there were times that I was out in the barn at, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night when everybody was in bed and, doing those chores and spending that time, or trying to get it done when, everybody's at school or, fitting it in where I can. It definitely is great to have a husband now that enjoys horses, also has that as a lifelong hobby and passion. So having that in common can really be helpful. But I think we know, or I know at least, that that's something that I need, having those passions and the connections that I do. It's kind of how I draw energy. And I feel like bring energy and different things to talk about and share in my relationship, and have just kind of had to learn to balance building time into, or finding that time to enjoy those things, and building it into, a lot of times our vacations are trail riding trips and that kind of thing. So I think, you wrestle with it, and you wrestle with, again, the same kind of thing when you have conversations with people. For me, it's part of my budget, just like bread and water. It's just something that I've always done. And I would say probably the same with, a gym membership, or, buying yarn again for my boring hobby.
Right. And do you think that people that are listening, do you think that even if their partner, significant other folks around in their life, if they don't share that hobby, can they still kind of, I guess, get along with that? Well, I guess, what advice would you give if somebody didn't have the same hobby, or have the same interest as you? How would you go about still pursuing it without feeling like you're causing them stress, or causing them negative feelings, I guess?
I think the same thing that you were just talking about. I think it takes communication. I think making space for the needs of the other person, being conscious of that, and just kind of balancing. I like to keep guilt out of it. I feel like I used to be driven and guided by a lot of guilt, and I don't ever want to do that again. So I think just being aware of the other person's feelings and needs, and making space for them, and, them being reasonable about the things that you want to do, and finding those times that you can do it and still support the other people in your life.
Yeah. And, that's the other thing is, as I've grown and matured and had kids, I've talked about this a bunch on this podcast, and just with friends in general. We had a sick child last week, and I had a lot of other things going on. I missed a couple of the days that I normally would go to the gym and do what I normally do. And yeah, it was frustrating, and it kind of negatively affected me mentally, but also at the same time, I was happy to do it because my daughter was sick. So I want to make sure she's getting taken to the doctor, even though it was a nightmare of a day, getting her to the doctor, getting her medicine, doing all the things that we had to do. I was happy to do it. So I think, like we've already talked about, is making that time to do your hobbies, but also it's not going to be the end of the world if you miss out on a little bit of it to take care of the other people in your family.
Well, and that's something that Rob often reminds me of, is that it is my hobby and not my job.
That's true.
I need somebody to give me that perspective every once in a while.
I like that.
Because, you have to remember that, because I, like yourself, am very intense about the things that I get involved with. And again, remembering that you can love it and do it, even if you're not great at it, and you are not getting paid for it. So if you miss a day or two, you can always get right back at it. So that perspective, and giving yourself grace, and the people in your life the same grace that you hope that they give to you.
Right. That's really important, because I think Jen does a really good job. My wife for the listeners who don't know for sure if it's my wife or not, Jen does a fantastic job of knowing that that's something that I like to do. So she'll even think through the day sometimes and ask, like, is that going to get in the way of, like, when you're wanting to go to the gym or you're wanting to go do a podcast, is that going to be a problem? Or, and that's the biggest, piece of advice that I think you gave me was the communication that I think has kind of really helped us navigate marriage and taking care of our children and still being able to have the time to do the things that we want. So the last kind of negative question that I have when it comes to hobbies is, what are your thoughts if you feel like we kind of touched on this with the last podcast with John, Patrick, and Jason. If somebody you feel like doesn't really have a hobby, if they're your significant other, what is your kind of advice? Would you just kind of let them do their thing? Would you ask to talk about it? Would you feel like you're being pushy by trying to tell them, like, oh, you should do something. You should pick up knitting. You should pick up,
I would say
something of that
don't ever
nature.
should on anybody.
Don't what?
Don't should on
Okay,
anybody.
that's true. That's good.
I think that having conversations, I think it's been interesting to me over time. I have some amazing friends who do not have a hobby, or at least would say that they don't have a hobby. And my advice to the world, because I think a lot of times it's that whole thought of, well, when the kids get old enough and they have their own thing, then I know I can pick something up then, or all of these things. And I think just the knowledge that there may be a too late.
Mm-hmm.
I want to enjoy this and do these things now and not wait until later. Because number one, I don't want to, even if I'm not aware of it, harbor any resentment because, I held off on this and didn't enjoy these things. But also number two, I don't want to not have that experience because I keep telling myself tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that. And so as far as a significant other or a partner, I think giving them space, understanding where they are, honestly, would there be enough room in your life for two people just like yourself? Right? You
It's a good
kind of
call.
need that balance and respecting that everybody has different things that they like to do and never assuming that their life isn't full because they don't have they don't have that, passion or some, that they would call a passion. And always encourage it and be willing to cheer them on if there's something that they would like to get involved with, but not pushing our own agenda with people, I would say.
I like that. And again, this is the podcast. It works for me. So that's another thing that I wanted to get out there is, yeah, the gym's really important to me. It's a hobby and it's something that I'm very passionate about, but I'm also very passionate about sitting on the couch and watching Love is Blind season 5 with my wife. That is, again, terrible television, but it's addicting. You want to see what happens. You love the drama between the characters. It's something that we share, which I don't know if I would even call that. That's not a traditional hobby, but that is a hobby of Jen and I is finding something that we both really get into, and that's something that works for us. Where she may not have the hobby of the gym or golf or knitting or horses or something like that, but we get great pleasure out of sitting and watching some crappy reality TV show and talking about it while the show's going on, because a lot of those times those shows, like you said earlier, it's kind of like white noise. Sometimes it's in the background and you can just talk over it sometimes because, or we'll pause it and say, wait a second, let's talk about what just happened just now. And that's something that works for us and that works for me, is having my own thing, but also still very much enjoying the thing that my significant other and I share together. Even if it's not, I guess not every hobby has to be self-improvement, growth, development, making yourself better or something like that. It could just be something that you enjoy having fun with somebody else.
Absolutely. I think about, the books that we've read at the same time that we discuss, and, they're not all winners for both of us, but we've had a couple that have really hit. And I think that that's fun. And I love that you two enjoy that together. So I think that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. And so just to kind of, let's kind of get closer to the end here. I'm just looking through my notes while I'm thinking about this. Is there, let's see, what do you think? What is something that with the horses or knitting, I would actually like to lean more on knitting. What do you think it's done that has maybe taught you something unexpected about yourself or your capabilities?
Oof.
And if it's not knitting, you can do horses if that's easier.
No. Honestly, it's another thing that was hard for me to learn to do. But it's another thing that, because I don't really love, I don't know if you know this about me, I'm not a big lover of sitting still. And so,
Shocker. That's
and
completely crazy. I would never have guessed that.
so I really enjoy knitting because it slows things down for me, and it's great thinking time for me, and I like seeing something that I have produced, and I also absolutely love giving something to someone that I have made.
Yeah.
And
well, Elliot still has her Nana blanket that she sleeps with every night.
I need to make another one, and I need to get started on one for Sylvie.
Yeah.
But that's such a good feeling. Of course, sometimes I get so in love with what I'm making that I never give it away. but I do love that. That's something. There's something about creating things that is very satisfying for me.
Yeah, and for me, the hobby of the gym has taught me something unexpected that, I probably could have figured out by just reading or listening to other people talk about it, but you're never actually satisfied. So that's the thing that's kind of tough. And I think it's kind of what brings you back to it. That's what brings me back to golf. That's what brings me back to lifting weights and training, is that if you get strong and big, then you want to lose your weight and get lean and look, a little bit different. Or with golf, if you'll have a round where you don't hit a good shot the entire time, and then you're on the 17th or 18th hole and you hit a perfect shot, and then it's like that's what keeps me coming back. It's almost like I do think that I might have a slightly addictive personality because of those things.
I do too.
Because when you, and I'm sure with your horses and with the knitting and the things that you do, when you have something go perfectly well, it gives you that kind of rush that it's hard to say that you don't want to just keep trying to go back for it. So,
Well, and I would say on the flip side of that, if you mess it up, you can always back it up and start again, or, back it up, beyond that mistake and start again. And, that's putting a lot of weight on knitting, but I really do think that, that really is a good lesson and, a great part of it.
What is a hobby that you've always wanted to try, but you never have? And
Well, now I took a class, and apparently I really love expensive hobbies, but I have always wanted to sail. Always wanted.
wow.
Yeah. I've always wanted a sailboat and have always wanted to sail. So took a class, probably 2 summers ago, with, Allie, and we totally enjoyed it. And, that is definitely one of those things, time and money. I already have an expensive hobby, And so I don't know if I'll ever get back to that. But that was really cool. That um, just the process of it is enough to learn. But then the class was taught by a really neat guy who, had been sailing for years. And when you start learning about the things that can happen on the water, it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, it's one thing to be sailing like in a lake or something like that. But he was teaching like everything, like the radio safety and, when you're out on open waters and that kind of thing. And so that was all a little bit scary and something that I think is probably a little bit more difficult. Again, sailing on a lake or something like that would definitely be doable. But that remains on my bucket list.
Maybe that's one that, when Allie gets finished with school, you guys can do together, and maybe she can be the primary person and you can still kind of live it out and do it.
I would love that.
So one of the things that I always think about is what does my perfect day look like when it comes to my hobbies and the things that I like to do. And it's pretty simple. Actually, I didn't really talk about any hobbies that I haven't tried that I would like to try and what might be stopping me from doing them. Honestly, I've tried everything that I've wanted to, like, essentially, I just want to get it out there that there are probably things that I've wanted to try that I didn't get into, but a lot of the times when something pops into my head that I want to try and I want to do, I go out and do it. Mm-hmm. Now, am I good at it? Probably not. For example, trying stand-up comedy, like that's again a tough thing that's very difficult, and it's very difficult to be good at. It takes hours upon hours and time and going up in front of people and doing it over and over and over. But I tried it. And so I guess I'm trying to think if there's something that I've wanted to do that I haven't tried. I would say hunting is actually something that I thought about wanting to do more recently.
Let's do it.
And that's just something.
Ammo.
Yeah. And that's just something that I've never done. And I feel like I maybe always make excuses for that. So that is something that I would probably write down that I would like to try to do.
Lay at duck hunting on we.
And we know that, my brother, Giancarlo, he's a hunter. He could probably show me the ropes. He's very, very smart and has been doing that for all of his life. So I think that's something that I would like to try to do and get out there and do. I think some of the things holding me back is I'd want my own equipment and gear, but that's just me wanting to go out and get my own thing. But yeah, that's something that I really haven't done. I mean, I did it as a kid, but I don't feel like I wasn't the hunter. I was just the dog going and chasing down the animals after they were shot. So yeah, I would say that that's something that I would like to try that I haven't done. But it's on my list, so we'll get out there and do it. And then to kind of wrap it up, what does your perfect day look like, and how do your hobbies play into it?
Gosh. I would say I don't have a perfect day. Just today, I've been on the road for the last couple of weeks, quite a bit for work. And, I've got a new baby horse in the barn. And, when I walk in the door, I know it's not me that she's excited to see. She's excited of the potential of food.
Yeah.
But
she's excited to see you.
She nickers and whinnies and, just getting my hands on her and seeing her. And, while I work during the day, my office, the window, right to my side looks out onto the pasture where the horses are. So I can watch them play out there and run around. And that brings me a ton of joy. Getting out on so many things, getting out on a trail, just even riding them here in the indoor, just any contact that I can have with them always just brings me a lot of peace and contentment and happiness and pride in myself, because it's something that I have worked for my whole life. And Just the fact that I have built what I have and can enjoy the things that I love and, have a wonderful group of kids. I mean, I
That's
couldn't be happier. So,
that's awesome. I would say perfect day if we're trying to involve the hobbies, mine would be pretty easy. I would be able to get up at not the butt crack of dawn, but I'd be able to get up in the morning, do my exercise. Then a couple hours later or an hour later, I would have a tea time for golf with my friends. Then we would come home, probably have like an early dinner, spend some time with the kids and the family, and then have an evening of playing video games in the basement with my friend. So those are the three big hobbies that I participate in the most. And that would be kind of a pretty sweet day where I didn't really have any responsibilities and I could kind of take my time doing each one of those things. I think would be a pretty fabulous day. But again, when you have family, friends, life, work, all of those things, you have to kind of manufacture those times and those days, and they're almost, there's never going to be a specific perfect day. There's too many things going on at the same time to have a perfect day.
And I would encourage everyone to, and I get, where you're going with this, but I would encourage everyone to let go of the idea of perfect and be really ready and open to enjoy those moments when that time happens. I think about taking Elliot on her first trail riding camping trip last fall and how meaningful that was to me. And everything isn't about horses, but a lot of that, sharing those hobbies and passions with the people that you love, is very meaningful. And, any of the time that I've been able to do that. But I also, think about us working out at the gym in Petoskey, Michigan, and, being able to enjoy the things that you love with you. Just let's not pursue perfection. Let's just look for those little moments in life where we get the joy that keeps us going.
I think that's a perfect way to kind of end it too, because again, that's what works for us is looking for those moments. That's something that you and I have talked about on a pretty regular basis, of not always looking for the next thing, not always looking for the next goal, next challenge, like actually taking time to sit down, be cognizant, take a few deep breaths and think about the things that you are thankful for and you're happy for, and to kind of realize where you've gotten into life. Because, if you're still around and you're my age, you've done some things right. If you've got a roof over your head, some kids and all of those things, and you've done some good things and done some things right along the way to get there. And that's important to think about as well. And also that's something that, again, you and I have talked about, is specifically being in the moment. Because I used to be somebody that I felt like lived very in the moment, to where I didn't think about the future. I didn't think about the past. I was just very happy existing in the moment and enjoying all of that. And then as I've gotten older, I've kind of thought more about the past and in the future, what I want to achieve, what mistakes I've made. And I think it's very important to take that time to not think that everything has to be perfect right this second, and look for those meaningful moments in life. Like you mentioned with Elliot, I have those all the time with Elliot and Sylvie and with Jen, where I'm just like, you know what, this is pretty cool what we're doing. For example, just a small example is going to the Westfield Christmas thing that we went to this past year, and just driving the golf cart down there, walking around and just looking at everything and just seeing how Westfield's building itself and growing into a even bigger city and more welcoming city, and just, I don't know, just looking around and being like, this is pretty cool that we are able to do this, and we are able to provide these kind of memories for our kids, and then also enjoy these memories ourselves. So
and
I think
seeing
that
it through their eyes, and also taking that time to realize, you did this, you built this.
Yep. Well, I think that's a good one to end on. So thank you again, Mom, for taking the time to chat with me about hobbies. And just for everybody listening, this has been what works for us. And hopefully some of these things will work for you. Thanks.
Thank you.